Anything you want to say, babes?
I just want to say thank you very much to everyone that's out there fighting for me. The team that's come together, and the support has been amazing. I've got a table full of rock stars here that are all working tirelessly around the clock fighting for this cause with me. And I just want all you guys out there across the world to know that I'm going to justify your effort, and I'm going to come back stronger and bigger and badder. And once I get back on my feet, we're going to justify all this. Make sure that all you guys' efforts don't go unnoticed. We're going to come together and have a huge party.
Oh, suck it now. Ha ha. Hell yeah, I know my dogs are watching. And if you ain't, I know you will be. And if you are watching and you ain't my dog yet, you will be, because I'm Swede and I'm here to help you get busy living. For me, that's one epic adventure every single month for 55 months in a row. But for you, every Thursday at 9 Eastern, we try to come here and help you guys get a little bit of insight, get a little bit of mindset training, get a little bit of experience, and share some special guests. And sometimes we have some special topics that we want to share with you to help you understand that it's not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to it that defines you as a man, as a woman, as a person on this planet. And this week, man, we're talking about a really important topic. We're discussing emotional intelligence, which is a term that has been somewhat of a buzzword lately, but it's not just a buzzy. It is a significant thing. And if you have not taken time yet in your life to familiarize yourself with what emotional intelligence is, there might be some things about it that are slipping through the cracks. And refining your knowledge about it, I think you're going to find out today, is going to help you in a lot of ways. Now, we have the holidays coming up, and that can confront us with some pretty awkward moments sometimes. So refining your emotional intelligence might help you be able to deal with some of that type of stuff. Today, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, some of the drawbacks that can happen if you're overly emotional, some of the things that can slip through the cracks if you're not emotional enough. And we're going to talk about No Nonsense November, which today is the last day. But first, since nothing is worth having if it ain't worth sharing, please help me welcome to the stage my dazzling co-host out of Los Angeles, California. Please welcome D-Rex to the stage. Oh,
I stopped my camera.
What's up, girl?
Oh, my goodness. Once again, so happy to be here hanging out with you. And I think that you covered everything. I don't have to say a single word. And that was a great show. But it's going to be very easy to talk about this topic today, emotional intelligence, which I think, when you think about intelligence, you think IQ. But today we're talking EQ. And it's so important. And it's so great to talk about because it's one of the intelligences that you can improve. You might be stuck with your ability to how you dance or your ability to do math, but you can improve your emotional intelligence. And that's really what we're trying to do here every week. We're not perfect people by any means, and we are not professionals, but we love to sit here and talk about things until we actually learn something. And you know what? Our audience has been so great about bringing their own wisdom into this. And I see that there's some people here already. Please say hello so that we can say hi to you. Otherwise, we don't know who you are. And we want to hear what you have to say on this topic today, too. So throughout the entire show, please chime in. All right. Yeah, Ray says that you know how to introduce a person. That's true.
What's up, my man, Ray Ferrito, my oldest living friend.
And not only that, one of your top dogs right here.
A Spoon Coon, Keyrod, what's up, dog? Thanks for showing up. What's up, Diane? Hello, good to see you. My terrible towel is within striking distance. Don't make me bust it out. Which reminds me, I'm going to just fast forward for a quick second. Next Thursday, okay, we're going to have a different kind of show next Thursday. This is news. Next Thursday, I'm going to do a little bit of a watch party because the Steelers game is going to be on, and I haven't mixed this podcast, which is, to me, it's about the nonprofit and the Get Busy Living. But I have yet to really mix this podcast like with my social life as much as a lot of people were expecting me to. So next week, I'm going to be watching the Steelers game during the podcast. So I'm going to be inviting my friends on a different kind of level to come and hang out with us next week. So yeah, my terrible towel is within arm's distance, but we're not going to be busting that out today. Just talking about
that's
that
going to be
being
super
in
fun.
the intro. And hello, Miss Podolsky in the house. What's up, girl?
And you know what? Watching a Steelers game during the podcast sounds a little bit like nonsense, but not for you. But the thing
No,
is, let's
no,
talk.
no.
Let's talk about all the nonsense that we did not participate in the month of November and how that went. Why don't you start?
Well, let me just tell you that I
Oh,
never
you know what?
felt.
We forgot.
Dun,
Why
dun,
even have these
dun.
things? Why even have them? Okay.
Yeah, so no nonsense November for me meant cutting out the things that distract me. Because honestly, as I wind down this month, I've got a heavy workload with school. I just have a lot on my plate, and I was finding myself heavily distracted and falling behind. And my productivity has been slipping bad. My medical issues are a constant struggle, and that, so I decided to cut out the nonsense for a month. Just to see how it felt. I was inspired by Scooty Wells. Those of you guys that didn't catch a Scooty Wells episode, who he was on with me a few weeks ago, Scott went the entire month of October. He turned 40 a couple days ago. Happy birthday, dog. And in order to prove that he still had it for himself, he did Chet's challenge, only he did it in October instead of in January. So
Oh, you know what?
Scott
Let's explain
ran.
that a little bit for anybody who's new here. That 100-mile challenge is running 100 miles in 1 month.
Yeah, which is not an easy task. People that don't run a lot think, oh, 100 is not that big of a number. Like, $100, that's not much. 100 miles, that's not much. But running 100 miles in 1 month is really difficult. I've done it once and I pulled a muscle and had to walk the last 5.5 miles. And that's when I was in pretty damn good shape at that point in my life. So for Scott to be at the age 39 and about to turn that corner, he wanted to prove to himself that he could do it, and so he did it. And man, that's a major accomplishment. That's think about it. That's 5 miles a day for 20 days, or 4 miles a day for 25 days, or 3.3 miles every single day of the month. Not an
And
easy
that's
task.
almost impossible to keep up.
Yeah,
That is
you
an
can you
impossible
just
one to keep up.
even I mean
Yeah.
even if
So
you're an avid runner
congratulations,
and
Scott.
yeah, good job, brother. And that him talking about doing that, kind of inspired me to try to kind of put myself through a little bit of a test. Um, so I did no nonsense November. I have to admit, it only lasted 20. What was Thanksgiving? I guess it was the 23rd day of the month. So 23. Well, actually 25 days because I started 2 days early. So I went 25 days of no nonsense for me personally, and I'm not saying that alcohol and other altering substances are complete nonsense. There's a lot of good that comes from them, but they are quite the distraction. So I went 25 days in a row with no nonsense before Thanksgiving came around, and the lovely Lyrical Miracle came and kicked it with me. So we did have a little bit of a celebratory Thanksgiving where there was a little bit of nonsense involved. But man, I tell you what, D-Rex, it's worth the hype. I noticed my memory working better. I noticed my focus being clearer. I noticed not being nearly as forgetful. And when you're dealing with as complex as a list as I'm dealing with, I'm working on a lot of different things over here, and trying to keep them all in order and keep my mind on all of them. And I'm not the type of person that likes to just get by with things. If I decide I'm going to do something, I like to do it well. But I have to admit that my condition is a major barrier for me being excellent in the ways that I would prefer. So it's a struggle, and doing this no nonsense November has helped me through the struggle. I've definitely increased my quality of work. I've increased my productivity level. And what I'm most excited about, honestly, is that I don't feel very um, excited. I mean, don't get me wrong. I look forward to going and having a beer with my brother Doug because it's been a minute, but I don't feel like I've been missing a lot. I feel more excited about the progress and productivity that I had in November than I feel about it's over and now I can go back to indulging. So it really has been impactful for me. I'm excited about it.
Well, you know what? I did participate. I had to remove my my lenses. I did participate somewhat in No Nonsense November in that I really stopped doing the nightly glass of wine, and I really don't drink much beyond that. But when I stopped doing that nightly glass of wine, after about a week, I didn't miss it. In fact, I just kind of replaced it with sparkling water. And I realized that it wasn't about drinking or getting a buzz from alcohol. It was more about having something nice and tasty in my hand. So even just cold sparkling water with a little mint leaf or a little bit of grape juice in it or grapefruit juice. I mean, it was just that act of having something nice and crisp to drink.
Yeah.
And it's totally working for me. I'm sleeping better. My skin looks clearer. There's a lot of benefits. So it wasn't as hard as I thought, but that's not to say, that it wouldn't be hard for someone who had a real and serious problem with alcohol. I just don't happen to have one. Now that's, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to cough. That's something we should talk about in regards to emotional intelligence. Pardon me. I have been so sick in the past week.
I'm glad you're toughing it out for us. We've both had that obstacle happen a time or two.
But like with alcohol, sure, it's one thing for someone who doesn't have a problem to sit here and say, yeah, I just stopped, and the same with emotional intelligence. It's like you want to be able to tell when there are real problems getting in the way, problems that need to be dealt with therapy. But what we're going to be talking about today is more about your average Joe and how you can improve your communication with others. And we're not going to dive into, but if you're depressed, because that's a whole different ball game. So we're going to keep it kind of on the surface of your average Joe. And I think I'm pretty much the average Joe when it came to drinking. And that's why it was so easy for me to just go, whatever. And we don't want to take that lightly. And we certainly don't want to take that lightly when we're talking about emotional intelligence as well.
Right. Exactly. Now, before we run into that, we've got a little bit of a competition going on in the chats here. So Diane is a huge Seahawks fan, and so she did not hesitate to bring that up. And then we got Kiro over here talking about the Steelers, and then we've got Holly Joe talking about the Browns. And then what's Ray talking about? What's this Lions talk? Get out of here, man. Hey, come back next Thursday for that. This week, we're talking about emotional intelligence. All right. So what exactly is emotional intelligence? It's not something that everyone is completely familiar with. So what we've got, basically it refers to the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and effectively use one's own emotions and those of others. So it's about, an interesting point that you made about intelligence, typically intelligence is something that it's a trait that you're born with, on a spectrum, and that's why we have an intelligence quotient. Typically, your intelligence quotient doesn't change much throughout your life. You can study more and educate yourself more, but your ability to process is what it is. Now, you can have problems. Your brain obviously can degrade and your abilities can degrade. But for pretty much what you're born with emotionally, or as far as typical intelligence goes, is what you have. But with emotional intelligence, you can actually, like you said, you can improve it. And I got to be honest, when I was doing my research for this, I have always been a very emotional person. And I consider myself to be an intelligent person. So when I was first exposed to the term emotional intelligence, which wasn't too long ago, I was just like, well, I'm intelligent and I'm emotional, so I must be emotionally intelligent. And I'll tell you what, it was a very humbling experience getting ready for this show, because I've learned, through all of my reading and such, that I've got a lot of progress to make when it comes to emotional intelligence. And I know there's going to be some people watching this at some point down the road, and they're like, yeah, we know that. We've been telling you that.
Well, I'm excited to hear about all these things that you dug up for everybody.
Yeah, so we're going to have some lists. We're going to have lists here for you guys to follow along with, and the lists are. We're not going to go we're not going to elaborate on every aspect of these lists, but we are going to talk about, basically how these things relate. So the key components of emotional intelligence, and there's a specific scientist, I can't remember what his name is. I should have noted that was got a lot of popularity for identifying emotional intelligence. This is also a fairly new concept in the realm of psychology. I mean, it's not something that's been around for a long time, but you can see on this list the key components, and it's kind of widely agreed upon that there's 5 key components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. What it means is if you refine your abilities in these 5 areas, basically that will increase your emotional intelligence. And they're somewhat self-explanatory, but what these mean are, and I'll just start with self-awareness. So recognizing and understanding one's own emotions. So the more you are aware of your own emotions, obviously, the more intelligent you're going to be, and how your awareness of your emotions impacts the thoughts and behaviors and decision making, and how they can impact others. And then the self-regulation is managing and controlling your own emotions. Like staying calm under pressure, or resisting impulses. These types of things. Adapting to changing circumstances. Regulating your own emotions is another key component. And then you've got motivation. Now, it's not to say that people who are lazy are less emotionally intelligent, but it is to say that having internal goals, being enthusiastic, and being passionate, and for your personal and professional achievement, these things show a strong correlation to being more emotionally intelligent. That I feel I felt that I've always been very motivated. So as I was going through this study, I was thinking to myself that, okay, so far so good. I feel like I'm pretty aware, and I feel like I can regulate myself. I mean, I used to have a temper when I was a kid, but not one that was terrible. Like I wasn't the guy going around punching people for no reason. Um, but at this point, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm pretty good with these components, and I also, like to think that I consider other people's feelings, and that's where empathy comes in. Understanding and sharing the feelings of others. Um, but I gotta admit, and I like to think that I'm very skilled socially. But once I got into the benefits of emotional intelligence, and then awareness of the drawbacks, that's when I started to become more aware of the fact that I've got a lot to learn. So
Ray has something to say here. He says, I actually just started in the past few years learning about how to have empathy for others, which opened my eyes on my self-awareness and how I looked at others. See, growing. Your emotional intelligence can be growing if you are actively trying. And I'm saying for myself that I might be slightly stunted with emotional intelligence sometimes, but I do actively try to grow. I am motivated to grow emotionally intelligence wise. I
yeah,
should try to grow vocabulary wise.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And so also here, Kelly says, "What about core values?" That's kind of what these are. They're not necessarily core values, but key components. So if you place them in the same realm as where you place core values, then they will guide you. Core values kind of guide you overall, that with your moral character and your level of integrity, and how you behave overall as a person. And our emotions are just one facet of our overall behavior. And so this is more focusing on being aware and being intelligent when it comes to how we behave emotionally. And what we were talking about, D-Rex, that kind of I thought we should mention is that if you emphasize emotional intelligence, and you make it important to yourself to refine your emotional intelligence, then it can help you when it comes to what we were talking about the holidays coming up. About how many
Yeah,
times you're
communicating with people,
communicating.
groups of people.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. You might find yourself surrounded by people during the holidays that don't normally hang around, and or people that you see every year during the holidays, and you find yourself just frustrated to no ends by them, and having
That
emotional
uncle,
intelligence,
that
that uncle.
cousin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's always that uncle.
exactly.
Why is it always that uncle?
I know. Why is it the uncle? And that makes me think about my friends who have kids and they call me Uncle Swede. I've got to be
Mhm.
that uncle to somebody.
You
but
might be.
yeah.
You
But yeah,
might be.
seriously, if you increase your emotional intelligence, then you can find a little bit more tolerance for them. And we're going to go through the steps of refining your emotional intelligence so that you can, so that you can understand,
Let's
you
go.
know, so that you can really kind of gain some tolerance and hopefully find some common ground and make it less unpleasant whenever you come across people that maybe don't think the same way you do, or you don't agree with how they think and feel. And by not agreeing with their thoughts and actions, you can become emotionally, irritated, or, your emotions, we all know about all the emotions that can be drawn out of you, and so there are benefits to refining your emotional intelligence. And so a couple of those, you can see them here: the personal growth. And by that, we're just talking about um, understanding yourself. And when you understand yourself and you've got this, all these priorities that you have to deal with in life, understanding yourself and the emotions that you're feeling while you're going through stress, or when you're trying to make decisions, and by being aware of it, you can increase your personal growth, because you're going to be able to you're going to make better decisions without having being emotionally erratic and finding yourself the next day being like, man, why did I do that? I was just in a bad mood, or I was angry, or I was irritated. And so by having a higher level of emotional intelligence, then
Mhm.
you can grow, personally that way. And so interpersonal relationships is something that I believe you were talking about earlier, you know, um,
But being around
about,
family.
yeah, that's a big one, right? Because, um,
I mean,
if
I
I,
think that I personally don't have this issue, but why are there movies and all sorts of stories about this? Because nearly everybody has somebody in their family have a difficult time communicating with. And it doesn't mean that this is constantly about difficult people dealing with difficult people. Sometimes it's a matter of, I don't know, a sibling that you constantly miscommunicate with. And maybe neither one of you are bad people, but you can't find the common ground to get the message across. Or maybe there's just these slight digs that either they're lobbing at you or you might be lobbing at them, and you need to create the awareness of what you are doing, or they need to be aware of what they're doing. These sorts of things can only help us enjoy each other more, and I mean that's the entire point of life. So I would say that, working on this, it pretty much leads to a happier life in general. It's the whole point of life is to enjoy others. The point of life isn't to go sit on a mountaintop by yourself and meditate, right?
right.
I mean,
That's why
I'm
it's
not
so
going to
rare.
say I know the reason for life, but I know that that's a pointless life lived there.
Yeah, if you're not sharing with others, I say that every day. If you're not sharing with others, what's the
Mhm.
point of having it? And so, hey, Lisa, what's up, girl? She's getting back to true virtues. When you have a higher level of emotional intelligence, you're able to keep a better cool of yourself, and then when other people are losing their cool, you can have more tolerance for that, and
Mhm.
like my Kelly says, you're talking about my day at work every day. Be cool. If you were a part of our HR, she says. So,
Mhm.
and so, as you can see on the list, leadership is also something that you will improve your leadership skills when you refine your emotional intelligence. Um,
Mhm.
you're managing teams, resolving conflicts. Kelly's just talking about at work, inspiring others. When you are aware of your emotions and how to control them and how to feel them, and also how to not feel them. Knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate is essentially that's what emotional intelligence is.
That is
Um,
a good point. That is such a good point, because I think that lately in society we've put so much attention on feeling your feelings because they're valid. And, yes, there's truth to that. But there's also this tipping point where it goes into your emotions are all that matter in that moment. And that's not the case. And that's not how we get along with others. And it's interesting to think about, where are those tipping points, like at what point is it too much in our heads about our feelings? Because there, on one side is feel your feelings, and on the other side is buck up, which, I think that maybe in some of our podcasts we have gone a little bit more toward the buck up side, because we come from this rough and tumble childhood where we were left alone a lot. There weren't a lot of resources and we had to buck up. And I think that there's a lot more people in the world that were more comfortable than us, and they didn't need to buck up, especially in areas where it wasn't necessary. Like, were you ever told as a child that to man up or not cry when you were actually hurt or sad about something,
Kidding me? Grams used to slap me and tell me to go outside and play and rub some dirt on it. Quit your crying, you know?
But
So,
there's a
yeah.
point where you should be allowed to cry and you should be allowed to show those feelings. But then at a certain point, you do have to move on. And it's different for everybody in every situation. And this is where the emotional intelligence tells you when to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a higher level of emotional intelligence will help you in circumstances when you shouldn't, be too emotional about something, and allow you to move on. And it will also, help you so you can recognize when it is appropriate to feel your feelings, understand yourself, be self-aware, because if you don't, so like you said, D-Rex, we have a lot in this podcast because we've introduced our audience to so many people that have faced grave adversities in their lives. I mean, from kidneys to tactical assaults to
Yeah.
brains to, I mean, name it, and
Hmm.
and addiction and alcoholism, and wow, just the amount of adversity that our guests that of this show have confronted our audience with, and each time we're always encouraging people to, to um, be strong, and when it gets tough, get tough, and that's that's true. We want you to do that, but there are times when it is appropriate for you to feel your feelings, and being emotionally intelligent is knowing when that's appropriate, because like it says, on this list, well-being, your emotional
Hmm.
intelligence plays a huge role in your mental health and well-being. Being able to navigate and understand emotions can, contribute to your resilience, and help you understand, when you're being challenged. Okay, I need to suppress my emotions and think with my thoughts about how to get through this. And then once you get through it, then you can say, okay, now that I'm through it, okay, let me understand myself. How did that make me feel? And that will, help you make decisions, when it comes to moving forward, which leads to number 5, ethical decision making. And by the way, when you were talking, Lisa chimed in, um,
Hmm.
and Lisa, as you can see here, is a survivor. And Lisa, you and I need to catch up. I'd love to have you on the show so that you can tell us about, your struggle and what you're going through.
Hmm. Hmm.
Ray
Liver.
chimes in.
I need to know about what that is. Yeah,
Well,
Graham's
her
saying so.
her liver. Lisa is a
Yeah.
survivor. But what I was getting at, and the next thing on the list here is the ethical decision making, like we were just saying. Um,
Hmm.
when you're emotionally intelligent, it can help you when it comes to making ethical decisions. And you know, um, we could probably
Wow.
do a
Mhm.
podcast on ethical decision making.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that one of the most important aspects of emotional intelligence right now that we could focus on is reacting. And of course, reacting is important. People need to know that you're thinking or feeling something, and we have to definitely watch and be aware of our reactions. Maybe when dealing with people who are a little more or challenging during the holidays. Um, if you watch your reactions, maybe they don't control what they are saying, but if you can control your reactions better, that can also lead to better communication, better times. When you're angry or sad about something, just watching your own reaction and realizing, is this a reaction, or can I think about this for a second? That's something that I've learned over the years, is not to just quickly respond, not to quickly react. And that has benefited me so much.
And that's exactly one of the areas where I definitely have a lot of room for growth. Um,
Mhm.
I've got myself into a lot of trouble with overreactions. Not not always mine. I don't always lose my temper, but
Mhm.
I don't have to have a lost temper for me to say things that are maybe a little bit harsh or brash. And when I see other people overreacting or losing their temper or um, not being emotionally intelligent, I've found myself, making the mistake of probably being too punitive with people about that. And
Mhm.
so that's where, my emotional intelligence definitely has a lot of room for growth. And it's important for us to emphasize emotional intelligence and making it important for you to grow there and make it, something in your life that you're consciously aware of. But man, you mentioned a little bit ago, D-Rex, that there are times in society when we are just we're just um, there are drawbacks to being overly emotional, and so
Mhm.
being emotionally intelligent is being aware of when you're being overly emotional, because being overly emotional can bring can bring problems too. You can overwhelm yourself, and being emotional can dictate your decisions, and you can find yourself the next day not being emotional and thinking, man, I wouldn't have thought that, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have said that. Like, you can overanalyze things when you're not emotionally intelligent and being emotional. You can dwell on things, and so
Mhm.
if we're not careful about putting too much emphasis on our emotions and not enough emphasis on our thoughts, then we can find ourselves kind of swooning. And there's a lot of times in society. Think about in society when, especially with the past 20 years, it seems like the way that I was as a young parent and the way that I treated my child, it seems like there's a lot of parents these days that are allowing their children to be overly emotional. And my daughter is an excellent caregiver. She's been a nanny for several different families, and she's very keen to this type of thing. And so, having spent the holiday with her last weekend, we had a lot of deep conversations, and she's far more emotionally intelligent than I am, and it's
Mhm.
probably because she grew up in a time when it was more acceptable to be emotional. um, but I feel like it's gotten to the point where it's getting a little bit out of hand. You know, um, when everybody gets a trophy, because we don't want Jimmy or Sue to feel sad because they didn't win. Like, by coddling, I think that there are problems when it comes to that. And that's why.
Well, I mean, when it comes to parents and their children, it's hard for me to give out parenting advice. I felt like I had a very easy child, but I think that one of the worst crimes that I see is when a child is crying over something really dumb, like not getting their iPad time, and then the parent will get down to their level and say, "Tell me about how you feel about the." Oh, you feel sad, and they're helping them identify their emotions about it. And I know that a lot of people subscribe to this way of thinking, but I do not. And because I think that with children, you really need to set boundaries, like what's important, what's really important, and what's not. You have to teach them that sort of thing. You can't just always be with children like, yes, everything you feel is valid, because you know what? Kids are nuts. They don't, they're not fully formed yet. They have all sorts of tantrums. They feel like everything, and you have to be the one that says, this is this is really important. This is a personal safety issue, or this doesn't matter at all. And I need to tell you that you need to buck up now. And
Yeah,
of course,
exactly.
don't know where that line is again, don't know where that tipping point is, but I can tell you that the most annoying thing to me is a baby crying over an iPad. That's just my personal truth right there.
Yeah, Dave Bailey comes in and says escalator versus de-escalator, knowing when it's okay to feel your emotions and when it's time to like, okay, you're a little overboard here. And Lisa says she says I'm guilty of being too emotional. She says I've relied on my emotions to guide me to find an answer. And look, if you are emotionally intelligent, you know when your emotions can lead you to the answers that you need, because how we feel, what's the point of living if you can't enjoy your emotions? So it's not emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing, it's about knowing when to allow them. And that's why it's important to know when that's too much, and there are drawbacks of being overly emotional. And that's what this list here talks about. Like when it comes to decision making, if you're not, if you don't have control of your emotions, it's very tough to make decisions rationally, well-informed decisions. And then going back to the interpersonal relationships thing, if you're constantly dwelling on your emotions, you might not be able to accurately interpret other people's emotions, and you might make assumptions about their behavior, and think that they have negative intentions when because you're being overly emotional and you're not really consuming their thoughts and their emotions properly. And then we've already talked earlier. Kelly was talking about the workplace dynamics. When you're in professional settings and you're trying to make logical, rational decisions about business, I think I think Ben Shapiro, this guy, said it best. He said, "Facts don't care about your feelings." And when you're trying to make business decisions, you can't be in a workplace and being overly emotional at work. You can't make rational decisions when your emotions are too strong. So that's another environment where you want to be able to have high emotional intelligence so that you can talk yourself off of the ledge, and make rational decisions. And it's just not appropriate to be emotional at work. Don't get me wrong. If you consider fun and emotion and excitement, then, you want to have fun and enjoy your work. But when it comes to making decisions and being a competent coworker, emotional intelligence is very important.
And we're talking a lot about emotional intelligence as being aware of yourself, but it's also being aware of others' feelings and how you're affecting others, and noticing how they're feeling and responding to that in compassionate ways. And I really find that I really can't go wrong when I try to be kind, even if I don't feel like it. I can't go wrong with kindness. I'm sorry, I still have kittens running all over me. You might see them pop up here and there. Not only so that, they're coming down from anesthesia today, and they're acting like little crazy animals.
So what anesthesia? You had to like put them to sleep so you could cut their nuts off. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Oh, what a joyful day! No wonder
yeah, they're really losing their minds. So yeah, I think that's also important that we bring up examples of how emotional intelligence, how you can use that to be a better friend and be a person that people want to be around, be a person that people always invite to parties and always want at their events, because those are people with high emotional intelligence.
Yeah, we mentioned social skills in the beginning. Oh, speaking of parties, this guy I met at Jay's wedding. What's up, Mike? Thanks for showing up, bro. It's good to see you, man. Hopefully you pick up some good nuggets here. Feel free to speak your mind, like Lisa has been sharing a lot with us today.
Yeah, it's great.
What you were just talking about, D-Rex, she was referring to, she said, I'm working on it. Very self-aware of that. It's a work in progress. And you know what, Lisa? It's a work in progress for all of us. And that's why we're doing this podcast, to let people know, because D-Rex and I both grew up, I think you said rough and rugged. We grew up a couple blocks from each other in the inner city of Erie, Pennsylvania. And a lot of our peers probably have the same sentiments as us, is that emotions, you got to suppress them. It's about being tough, and it's about moving on, and it's about, being strong. You know, it takes strength to deal with your emotions and allow yourself to feel them. And that's the point of this, is that you need to be able to allow yourself to feel your emotions, but you got to know when it's appropriate. And this slide here we're talking about is when you're allowing yourself to be too emotional. Because if you're overly emotional, the next one we're talking about is the stress management. Because if you're overly emotional, then every stressor just is going to tip your emotions even further um, into demise. And learning to develop coping mechanisms so that you can maintain a healthy balance is really important, with managing stress. And if you're overly emotional, that just becomes impossible. And if you're overly emotional, how can you reflect accurately? Because we've already talked on past podcasts about being self-aware and spending time reflecting. And that's very important when it comes to self-reflection. Being self-aware is a key component of emotional intelligence, but dwelling too much on personal shortcomings or mistakes, without constructive action can lead to self-doubt and hinder your personal growth. So it's important, that you're not overly emotional, because these things can just they can snowball. And then the next one on the list, communicating. If you're always emotional and others aren't, it can make it difficult for others to communicate with you, and it can make your communication skills just kind of watered down. And we've all been around that person at work that every day it's the worst day of their life. Every day, they you know they're upset about how the traffic was to get there, or how much gas costs, or every day they've got the worst thing going on. And when you're not able to control your emotions, when you're that type of person, communicating with those kind of people about important things just becomes impossible. you know um, so it's important that if you were talking earlier about how having people around, life is about enjoying it with others. If you're
Yeah.
if you're the type that's so overly emotional all the time, then you're a difficult person to be around. And it's something that you need to be aware of, because that is a huge drawback. Oh, what's up, girl? Hey.
Yeah,
Magic
because
Mel.
hi Melanie.
We've had Mel, one of our other rock stars, back in the house. Glad, thanks for showing up, Mel. Going to be seeing her in a week, right, Mel? Hell yeah. So
Mhm.
yeah, and Mel's a very strong communicator, and
Yes.
I bet that she could probably do a clinic on emotional intelligence. And
Yeah, for sure. And you know
so
what?
another,
I want to expand on what you were saying there. When you're a person who complains a lot, um, the way that you can improve your emotional intelligence is realize that that has an effect on others. And then the self awareness that comes in, like when you realize that you're complaining, is for you to stop and maybe try to actively say something positive. But it's really not just about like you and how it's going to bring you down. It really is bringing others down around you. And if you would like to improve that, then definitely try to catch every time you are saying something negative and try to turn into something positive. I realized after a long time of being alive that I would often phrase things negatively. And I didn't realize the effect that that could have on my listener, you know? And once I realized I was doing that, then I would stop and say, "Let me rephrase that." And I've been able to slowly fix it. Some of these behaviors that they've been in us since childhood, they're very hard to fix, but self-awareness is definitely the first step.
yeah, and it was on our list that we had earlier. The first step, last on this list, creativity and innovation. So how does being overly emotional affect your creativity and innovation? Well, it can stifle your analysis skills. If you're being emotional, then there's an effect on your calm. And if you're not calm, then you can't let your mind wander. because
Mhm.
your emotions take control. And so if you're overly emotional, one of the potential drawbacks is that it can stifle your creativity, and it can inhibit your risk taking and exploration skills. So
Oh, you know what? You're not going
the
to believe this. You're not going to believe this. I'm bringing in the Who's Wrong segment.
So then, where
Okay.
did where do we have a difference of opinions here?
Okay, so you were saying that it could stifle your creativity. I have never seen such prolific songwriters as teenage girls who have just been broken up with. It spurs on their creativity like wildfire tearing through a dry forest. So I would
I
say in this case, I'm right. But that's really the only way I see it really enhancing creativity.
Yeah, I see your point there, and so I'm not going to say
Mhm.
that you're wrong. But what I'm because when it comes to songwriting, what I feel is that the emotions, what you're referring to as creativity, I think it's less
Mhm.
that they're creative. I just think that they're more aggressive and more bold about saying things that they wouldn't normally say if they weren't hurting. So but I
Mhm.
see your point. So I stand corrected. I stand corrected a little bit there.
Oh, I'm
But
right. I won. Okay.
check out
So let's
no.
move on.
Oh, sick is sicky. And Lisa, I love that you're keeping up with us, because you
Yes.
sharing. We got to
You're
get
a real
Lisa on the show.
participant today. I love that.
Yeah. She said, I find myself self-reflecting on myself a lot, especially when it comes to loving my true self. When I feel like I'm mastered every mask I've had to put on. That's interesting. And
Hmm.
that I think is an episode in itself. It's not that in love, I guess, is an emotion, right? I mean, love is a mystery, but loving yourself, having you can love yourself and be emotionally inept. But you can also be so emotionally intelligent that you don't know how to love yourself. So I think love is somewhat of a mystery in there. And but with this awareness of potential drawbacks, so we're going to wrap this up with what I've done some research on is some tips to avoid those drawbacks. And so these are some things that you can do to help yourself from being so emotional that you're stunting certain aspects of your life that we just covered in that last list here. And so some tips to avoid it. So basically, things that you can do to to save yourself from becoming overly emotional and then allowing emotional intelligence to stifle you. So one is developing mindfulness. That you were just kind of mentioning that, talking about
Yeah.
self-awareness, and like Lisa was saying, talking about reflecting, cultivating mindfulness, staying present in the moment without being overly consumed by your emotions is extremely important. And then seeking perspectives, we do that here. So that's why we always invite you guys to speak up in the comments, because we want to hear your perspectives, and that's why we're so thankful for Lisa's being outgoing today about her truths. And a couple
Mhm.
of the folks that have been in our comment section today have been guests in the past, Melanie being one of them. And so we appreciate
Mhm.
you guys sharing, because what this seeking perspectives is considering the bigger picture and long-term goals. Like when you're faced with challenges or emotional situations, finding what other people feel about your circumstances can help you avoid falling into one of those emotional pitfalls. And then next on the list here, setting boundaries. Establishing healthy emotional boundaries is extremely important. My
Mhm.
daughter is a queen at talking about that. It prevents you from being overwhelmed by other people's emotions, because if you're the type of person, and I definitely am the type of person that invites people to share their problems with me, I find myself, 2, 3, 4 hours later, still sitting there talking about their problems, and I enjoy it, but I have found that it becomes counterproductive for me in my life. So establishing boundaries is very important, and then self compassion. Hmm. That's not one that I.
Practicing practicing self-compassion is probably the most difficult thing for most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do we love to be so hard on ourselves? Why do we love to go down that spiral, just beating ourselves up? What is, there's nothing good there at the bottom of the spiral, you know?
Anybody in the comments want to elaborate, have an opinion about that? Because I gotta be honest, that's not one that I'm real strong with, you know. Um,
Self compassion. Yeah.
yeah. So Ray, thanks, Ray. Ray's got some here for us. Slowly, slowly I'm getting emotionally attached to the cast. Everything you give us week to week. Thank you both. Thank you, Ray, man. We appreciate you
Well,
showing up.
thank you, Ray.
For real. Um, So yeah, the self-compassion is one that, you know, I mean, I did read up on it a little bit, you know, treating yourself with kindness and understanding and acknowledging your
Hmm.
experiences and a range of emotions. That's important, for sure. And it's not one that I think that's one that, like you already said, a lot of us really just struggle with. You know, it's because we want to act like everything's okay. You know, we want to be tough, and we don't want to admit our weaknesses, you know. And being emotionally intelligent is knowing when it's okay to admit that, you know, you don't have it all figured out, you know. What's Ray say? A lot of us think
If you're
yeah,
not hard
there's
on yourself, you won't succeed. And you know what? I think that that's definitely a fallacy. But you know, again, there is a tipping point, right? Um, sure, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself that you're just beating yourself up. You definitely need to go forward with confidence and the belief that you can do things. But where's the tipping point where it goes into being delusional about your abilities and what you deserve, you know? There's always that there's always that point. Very hard to discern.
yeah. And you know, the thing that's really complicated about this, and it lands perfectly on this last one, utilize support systems, is that we don't always know, you know, and it's
Mhm.
different for everyone. That's why it's so important to take time with yourself, to talk to yourself, be nice to yourself, ask yourself intelligent questions, be honest with your answers, and then when you know you've exhausted your own resources and your own acumen, you know, do not be afraid to ask for help. You know, I mean, that's been a theme of this show since, you know, we've been doing it for over a year now. You know, is to not be afraid to ask for help. I honestly have not historically been a person that's been very good at asking for help, and I believe that
Mhm.
my emotional intelligence is is head and shoulders above where I was before I got injured because I've been forced to ask for help now. You know, and by
Mhm.
utilizing your support system, you know, talk to your friends that you trust their opinion. You know, don't go talking to people that are emotionally a wreck all the time about your emotions because they're just going to wreck you. It's like you don't talk to unhealthy people about nutrition. You know, you don't talk to broke people about money. Don't talk to people that are emotionally erratic about your emotions.
Or people that will just allow you to vent and just agree with you. You know,
Yeah,
you definitely
exactly.
want people that you look up to that are emotionally intelligent. You know, can we just add in with self-compassion, compassion for others, you know, because that's part of the emotional intelligence is when someone's coming at you with something and you feel like you need to react. That's something that you can practice is having compassion for them and why they might be feeling the way they are. And sometimes it goes really deep. Sometimes it goes all the way back to their childhood, which you couldn't possibly understand. And just keeping that in mind can be really important.
Yeah, and then when it goes to compassion, look what Melanie said. She said, "I've been getting a lot better being aware when I'm too hard on myself." You know, and
Uh-huh.
hey, by the way, speaking of Melanie and speaking of utilizing support systems, if anybody is looking for a support system or a mentor, Melanie is a professional mentor. So if you guys need to know about that, we've got an episode that Melanie was our featured guest on. Please check that out or reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to
And
put you in
Melanie could
touch.
also put her information there in the comments so that it's
Yeah,
there
Mel,
attached
if
to
you
this
wanna
video.
if you wanna offer up your contact info here real quick, and we'll go ahead and put it
Mhm.
up there for you, because I can tell you this, Melanie pulled me out of a deep hole last summer, and, And if it wasn't for her, I would not have been able to get myself together and pull off all the stuff that I'm working on right now. So thank you, Melanie. But if you guys tuned in a few weeks ago, we did a show about the Freedom Mastery Planner, and Melanie is the master of the Freedom Mastery Planner. So I got some other interesting comments from Lisa. She said, we're all conditioned differently, so I might be able to give my view. So, Lisa, me and you, we have a date in the near future to talk about when you're going to come on the show and share your story, because we love to feature survivors here. It's not about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to you that defines you. And you're a shining star in that. And then Ray, make yourself happy and everything else will fall into place and be easier to understand. That's true, but that's, making yourself happy is not always an intuitive thing. So if you want to know, if you want to refine your skills at making yourself happy, come back here every Thursday, because we drop knowledge on you every Thursday about, getting busy living. And that's really, in a nutshell, that's what, getting busy living is making yourself happy. But, a lot of people are happy just to sit on the couch. That's not getting busy living, if you ask me. Facts, Melanie says. So yeah, we're drawing down here to the end of the show, and I appreciate you guys coming in, but we got a couple more comments that I want to just keep up here, because as long as you guys are interacting, we want to let your voice be heard. So she said, I changed my ways for growth. I realized that the way I was conditioned in life deserved a new perspective of life. I've learned to blame no one. Wow, that's power. That's powerful. So guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, friends, folks, family members, every Thursday we're here. And before we cut this short, I want to remind you guys that we are doing a fundraising effort for my man Schaefer. The Get Busy Living podcast is the marketing arm of the nonprofit that is named after the campaign that saved my life. So for those of you that may not be aware, I was on my deathbed a few years ago, paralyzed from the chest down with a collapsed lung. And because of the collective generosity of just about everybody that's in this podcast, and anyone that might see this in the future, you can look it up. Because of the generosity of others, I had my life saved. So I'm dedicated my life to collecting generosity and trying to save the lives of others. So you can go to the hswa.org and you can see that we've got Schaefer as our featured beneficiary right now. We're trying to get Schaefer down to Panama to get some stem cells to help him overcome his cerebral palsy, which stem cells is proven to have a high efficacy when it comes to the realm of cerebral palsy. So please do go there. And also, if you know somebody that you feel would benefit from stem cells, you can send their story to nominations@thehswa.org and let us know. We're looking for people that are working hard to help themselves, and that have basically exhausted their resources and are looking for, to find a way to overcome treatments that have been traditionally untreatable. And that's what we believe stem cells to be. So if you know somebody that applies to, please do send their story to nominations@thehswa. So D-Rex, do you want to share any stories about your kittens, or is there anybody that wants to speak up in the comments? Something that we talked about being more mindful of is giving the folks in the comments an opportunity to speak their piece before we sign off, because oftentimes we'll be signing off and then the last few comments will be coming in. So I know we've still got some folks that are watching. If you guys have any ideas or any comments that you want to share.
Can I say something really quick about one thing that I feel you can do to increase your emotional intelligence is to volunteer with animals. And that's what I do. I have new kittens here all the time, you might notice. That's because I am a foster parent of kittens, and I raise them to a certain point and then I get them adopted. And honestly, there's hardly anything more rewarding than sending these little babies off to wonderful homes that I handpick every single time. And also, taking care of an animal really gets you out of your own head, taking the time out of the day to make sure that they're happy, they're fed, they're taken care of, they're warm, they're safe. I feel like that's definitely one way where you can get out of your own head and start getting better at noticing others and what they need.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, D-Rex. That's something I hadn't considered, and I have often found myself puzzled by the amount of resources and effort that people put into animals. I love animals, but I don't love them so much that I would sacrifice my own and other humans' well-beings. But I get that now. That was very well put. And look, we've got some folks here that that got some things that are worth sharing. So Lisa said it takes work, and then she's talking about can't wait to hear you, Mel. So yeah, and Mel's like got mine, and so look, oh Mel, she said D-Rex, you look stunning, babe. Love this
Oh,
look.
thanks.
And then Lisa said, thank you, D-Rex. Love your cadence. Wow, what a great word.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
You know, I really appreciate all of you guys showing up each week. This is a huge part of the project that I am putting forth. I'm expending every bit of my energy in my life to making sure that all of you that chipped in to save my life, it'll be 6 years and in just a few weeks, 6 years ago that I chased that monkey. And thanks to all of you, I'm still around to enjoy this beautiful planet and still enjoy you beautiful people. I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, Mel. Seriously, I appreciate you guys coming back each week. Please do, if you can, go to the hswa.org, chip in to help us get Schaefer down there. Once we can prove to the masses that we can help one person get this very expensive treatment, I believe that that will get us social credibility. And then the folks that have been lying and just waiting to see us work, I think that that will just, that will help perpetuate the movement. Oh, Dave, Papa Bailey said, get a German Shepherd. My first dog was a German Shepherd. And when I get a dog, which I am, I have worked on to a degree getting a service dog, because that would definitely help me out. I definitely want it to be a German Shepherd. So thank you, Melanie, for showing up. She said, amen. Love you. Love you back, Mel.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here today and being so active in the comments. It's something that we were talking about right before the podcast, is that we really want to hear more from the audience, and you guys did not disappoint today.
Hell yeah. Ray said, God bless. See you next week. So with that, D-Rex, thank you very much for putting so much effort and time and energy into this Get Busy Living podcast every Thursday. Always remember, we're all in this together. Always remember, no matter the weather, whether sunshine or rain, there's no joy without pain. Always remember, we're all in this together. Can I get a hell yeah?
Hell yeah.
Ha ha.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Swede.
But you gotta believe me, ain't nothing coming easy my way. No, I fucking work, but it's a fucking work. You can see it when you...
Whoa, wrong button. End stream.